Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have an excellent show for you today. First, I'll be delivering my news report, as always. That will be followed by a special report on USAID from Mr. Bionade. That will be followed by the report, as usual, from Germany to Ukraine. And we will have our final segment will be a situational update from the basement, including Gesh and possibly another contributor later. Yeah, I think we'll just start by saying please do hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. The last video, we got flagged for violent content. If you saw the last video, you know we went to great lengths to make sure there was absolutely no violence at all. It was a totally G-rated stream, and we won the dispute. A human being reviewed it and said we weren't violent people, which is always good. We passed their little personality test. So thanks so much, everyone, for sticking by us and all that. We appreciate your support. We're doing our best to make it right with YouTube and keep everything going. If you could also check out our website, tochnyi.info. It's a great place for lots of information, research, and articles. So we have a lot of good content for you today. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the intro here.
These are the main headlines as of February 9th, 2025. Up first, we have operations news. In the early hours of February 5th, a petroleum storage tank in Russia's Krasnodar territory caught fire following a drone strike. The regional governor acknowledged the attack, stating that military forces intercepted what he described as Ukrainian drones. While no injuries were reported, fragments from one of the downed drones fell onto the oil tank and ignited the blaze, according to him. Local sources referenced by the Astra Telegram channel specified that the target of the attack was an oil storage facility operated by Albashneft LLC. The regional crisis response team later confirmed that firefighters had successfully extinguished the flames by 8:11 a.m. Moscow time. The official statement by the Defense Ministry the following day did not mention the attack. Russia is establishing a new military branch focused on unmanned systems, with plans to recruit up to 210,000 personnel by 2030, according to Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky on February 6th. Syrsky stated that intelligence indicates that Russia aims to create 277 military units specializing in unmanned systems as part of its long-term strategy. His remarks come after a monthly review of Ukraine's drone warfare operations, where he assessed the effectiveness of unmanned systems in combat during January 2025. He emphasized that Ukrainian forces are enhancing coordination between drone units and traditional military formations based on reports from frontline units. According to Syrsky, drone attacks were responsible for destroying 66% of Russian military assets last month. The effectiveness of drone strikes has also risen, with a 7% increase in successful targets compared to December. Ukrainian FPV drones accounted for nearly half of all the recorded damage inflicted. Ukrainian forces have initiated a new offensive in Russia's Kursk Oblast, according to President Volodymyr Zelensky. He reported that Ukrainian troops have advanced by 2.5 kilometers in the region in an interview with Reuters. Zelensky also stated that thousands of North Korean soldiers have resumed combat operations in Kursk Oblast after a temporary withdrawal lasting several weeks. During his evening address on February 7th, he reiterated that Russian forces have once again deployed North Korean troops to the area, with renewed clashes occurring along the front. According to him, the fighting has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Russians and North Korean soldiers. A recent report from Reuters also suggested that North Korean missiles, which have been used in Russian strikes against Ukraine, have shown increased precision. Up next, we have economy and aid. On Thursday, Ukraine received its first batch of Mirage 2000 fighter jets from France, marking a significant addition to its air force alongside the Western-supplied F-16s delivered last year. French Armed Forces Minister Sébastien Lecornu confirmed the arrival and stated that Ukrainian pilots flew the jets into the country after undergoing extensive training in France. He emphasized that the aircraft would now contribute to Ukraine's air defense efforts. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense shared an image of a Mirage 2000 in Ukrainian colors taking off, accompanied by the caption, "Already in Ukraine." The introduction of Western jets enhances Ukraine's ability to operate NATO standard weapons, including Scalp and Storm Shadow cruise missiles, guided bombs, and air-to-air missiles widely available among allied nations. The Netherlands, Denmark, and Norway provided F-16s in 2023, with additional deliveries expected from the Netherlands. The French president initially announced the Mirage 2000 transfer plan in June, but did not disclose specifics at the time. According to an October budget document from France's National Assembly Defense Committee, a total of 6 Mirage 2005 jets were allocated for Ukraine. The first delivery included 3 aircraft equipped with MBDA Mica air-to-air missiles, Scalp cruise missiles, and Safran AASM hammer-guided bombs. These jets also feature 2 30mm cannons and 9 hardpoints for various munitions. While the Mirage 2005 was originally designed for air superiority, the aircraft sent to Ukraine were upgraded for air-to-ground operations and enhanced resistance to electronic warfare. In contrast, France's Mirage 2000D is primarily used for ground attack missions. The Mirage 2000 has a long operational history, having first taken flight in 1978, with an air defense variant entering French service in 1984. Manufactured by Dassault Aviation, around 600 units have been produced, nearly half of which were exported to countries such as Brazil, the United Arab Emirates, Greece, and Taiwan. Ukraine has also received a new shipment of F-16 fighter jets from the Netherlands, further bolstering its air force as it continues to modernize its aerial capabilities. The delivery was confirmed by Defense Minister Rustam Umerov through the Ministry of Defense's press service and reiterated by President Volodymyr Zelensky during a briefing in Kyiv on February 6th. Bulgaria is set to receive approximately 500 million euros from Ukraine's largest international donors as compensation for its military assistance to Kyiv, according to a report by Euroactiv on February 7th. Bulgarian Defense Minister Atanas Zaprianov emphasized that by supporting Ukraine, Bulgaria is also reinforcing its own security. The country has already secured 174 million euros from Denmark through 2 military aid contracts. Authorities anticipate that soon an additional 300 million euros from the United States and the European Commission will further offset the cost of supplying military equipment to Ukraine. Bulgaria has been sending older Soviet-era weapons and equipment to Ukraine while using the financial compensation from NATO and EU partners to invest in modern Western weaponry. The government has delivered 6 military aid packages so far, including ammunition, armored vehicles, and non-functional air defense missiles that can be salvaged for spare parts. While Bulgaria does not disclose the exact details of its military shipments, a large portion reportedly consists of munitions and missiles for Ukraine's S-300 air defense systems. In 2024, Bulgaria also transferred 150 armored vehicles and Soviet-era Gvozdika self-propelled howitzers. Despite the strategic and financial benefits of aiding Ukraine, pro-Russian political factions in Bulgaria continue to push back against such assistance. Konstantin Konstantinov, the leader of the pro-Russian Revival Party, reiterated Kremlin narratives on January 11th and advocated for Bulgaria to reclaim southern Bessarabia, a region within Ukraine's Odessa Oblast. Belgium will allocate 1.7 billion euros in tax revenue generated from frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, according to a report by the Belgian publication VRT. The funds come from taxes collected on Russian holdings managed by Euroclear, a major financial services company headquartered in Belgium. Euroclear's latest financial records indicate that last year alone, Russian assets blocked within the institution generated significant tax revenue for the Belgian government. These funds will now be redirected as aid to Ukraine. In total, approximately 183 billion euros in Russian assets remain frozen at Euroclear, consisting of cash, securities, and loans that Russian entities can no longer access due to international sanctions imposed after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Euroclear plays a significant role in the global financial sector, although the Belgian federal government holds only around 12% of its shares, with the remaining ownership divided among regional governments and banks. Before the sanctions, the company provided financial services to Russian companies and the government, but all transactions were suspended following the imposition of economic sanctions. The interest generated from the frozen Russian funds is being transferred to a dedicated account at Euroclear, where it contributes to European financial assistance for Ukraine. Herman Smetanin, Ukraine's Minister for Strategic Industries, announced a new partnership between the Ukrainian defense industry, JSC, formerly Ukroboronprom, and Poland's state-owned defense company, the Polish Armaments Group. Oh, I thought that was going to be hard, but it's just Polish Armaments Group. The agreement signed on February 3rd aims to enhance cooperation in ammunition production, equipment, maintenance, and air defense capabilities. Smetanin detailed that the agreement will facilitate the production of ammunition, the servicing of armored vehicles and artillery, and efforts to strengthen Ukraine's air defenses. Both parties intend to explore financial mechanisms that provide access to resources under the European Defense Strategy and the European Defense Industrial Program. The minister emphasized the urgency of this cooperation, highlighting Ukraine's critical need for explosives, essential components, and broader industrial collaboration to sustain its military efforts. The Japan International Cooperation Agency and Kakuichi, a major Japanese manufacturer of warehouses and garages, are collaborating with Ukraine to introduce nanobubble technology aimed at enriching the soil with oxygen. The initiative is being facilitated by Ukraine's State Agency for the Development of Land Reclamation, Fisheries, and Food Programs. Kakuichi is recognized for its expertise in nanobubble systems and has supplied Ukraine with 3 nanobubble generators as part of a pilot project. These devices are scheduled for installation in Kyiv, Odessa, and Poltava Oblasts by the end of February. Each generator is designed to irrigate approximately 1 hectare of farmland, allowing for a controlled evaluation of the technology's impact. The primary advantage of nanobubble irrigation is its potential to eliminate reliance on chemical fertilizers. By infusing water with oxygen at a microscopic level, the system promotes soil regeneration and plant growth in a sustainable manner. Ukrainian officials believe that this approach could be instrumental in rehabilitating farmland damaged by the ongoing war. Although research on Ukrainian soils is still in the preliminary phase, officials express optimism that Japanese nanobubble technology will contribute significantly to restoring Ukraine's agricultural productivity. On February 6, 2025, Ukraine marked a significant milestone in its energy sector by exporting biomethane for the first time. The Energy Customs of the Ukrainian State Customs Service completed the initial customs declaration for a biomethane shipment transported via pipeline to Europe, according to an official statement from the agency's press service. The development opens new possibilities for Ukraine's agricultural and bioenergy industries. Biomethane is derived from organic waste and not only supports sustainable farming practices, but also strengthens the country's position as a potential key supplier for renewable energy to the European market. The first shipment to the European Union consisted of 67,000 cubic meters of biomethane. Ukrainian Energy Minister German Galushenko highlighted the country's commitment to becoming a dependable provider of clean energy for Europe. He stated that biomethane exports will play a crucial role in Ukraine's evolving energy market, aligning with broader efforts to modernize their natural gas sector. Ukrainian authorities have structured connection and transportation tariffs for biomethane producers to match those of natural gas suppliers, ensuring a streamlined integration into the country's gas transmission network. Biomethane is sort of an alternative to natural gas, so it makes sense to regulate it that way. The shutdown of the Pokrovskoye mining group, which I mentioned a few weeks ago, including the Pokrovskoye coal, due to frontline developments, will be offset by importing coal from Metinvest mining operations in the United States. Denis Sakva, a senior analyst at Dragon Capital, discussed the shift during a podcast hosted by the Center for Economic Strategy, where he examined the impact on the metallurgy sector and the broader economic consequences of losing Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region. Sakva explained that Pokrovskoye coal played a crucial role in Ukraine's steel production, being the primary domestic supplier of high-quality coking coal in 2023. With the increased demand for steel in 2024, imports had already been rising, and companies such as ArcelorMittal had been sourcing coking coal and coke from abroad. The mine previously produced 2.5 million tons of coal concentrate annually, a volume that must now be replaced through imports. Metinvest owns coal mining assets in the U.S. through the United Coal Company, but transporting coal from these facilities to Ukraine adds logistics expenses and increases the strain on ports and rail networks. Additional imports will come from Europe, with ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih also securing coal supplies internationally. Pokrovskoye coal had been a major economic contributor, generating around 4 billion hryvnia in profit in the first half of 2024 and paying 700 million hryvnia in taxes and royalties. Despite the loss of the key facility, Ukraine's metallurgy sector experienced growth in 2024, even after the loss of Mariupol, a city that had housed modernized plants for producing flat-rolled steel. Currently, Zaporizhzhstal is the primary producer of flat products, although its infrastructure is less advanced. Steel production in 2024 reached 7.5 million tons, while rolled product output slightly exceeds 6 million tons. Domestic consumption accounted for about one-third of the output, with 4 million tons exported, bringing in $2.5 billion in revenue. Rail and maritime routes continue to facilitate exports, primarily to European markets, but new trade connections have been established with Turkey and Africa. Ukraine also remains a major exporter of iron ore concentrate and pellets, including shipments to China, with Metinvest, Ferrexpo, and AMKR as key players in that sector. Sakra pointed out that production costs are rising due to higher energy prices, logistics expenses, wages, and taxes, and noted that demand for steel and iron ore in Europe is currently weak, making significant growth in 2025 unlikely unless driven by developments in China's economy. The U.S. Justice Department under President Donald Trump is shutting down Task Force KleptoCapture, the unit responsible for targeting Russian oligarchs' assets and enforcing sanctions. The decision, outlined in a memorandum from newly appointed Attorney General Pamela Bondi, marks a shift in priorities for the department. The move coincides with Trump's push for negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, which he claims are aimed at ending the ongoing war. The memorandum, dated for February 5th, states that attorneys assigned to the task force will return to their previous positions, while resources previously dedicated to combating kleptocracy will be redirected toward fighting drug cartels and transnational criminal organizations. In her statement, Bondi argued that addressing organized crime and drug trafficking, particularly the distribution of fentanyl, should take precedence. She stressed that the Justice Department will intensify efforts to dismantle criminal networks, working in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security. Task Force KleptoCapture was launched in March of 2022 following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, with a primary focus on enforcing U.S. sanctions against Russian elites. While investigations initiated by the task force are expected to continue, Reuters reports that they will no longer be managed centrally from the Justice Department's headquarters, potentially leading to a slowdown in enforcement actions against Russian financial interests. Russia attempted to exploit the Akkuyu nuclear power plant project in Turkey in 2022 to create a concealed offshore dollar reserve, allowing Moscow to bypass Western sanctions, according to the Wall Street Journal, which cited sources familiar with the plan. The scheme reportedly involved high-ranking Russian officials, including the Bank of Russia Governor Elvira Nabiullina, and Turkish officials within President Erdogan's inner circle, particularly Turkish National Intelligence Chief Ibrahim Kalin. The plan centered on Gazprom Bank, one of Russia's largest banks, which was not under U.S. sanctions at the time. The bank was set to provide a $9 billion loan for the construction of the Akkuyu nuclear power plant, a project being developed by Rosatom, Russia's state atomic energy corporation. According to the Wall Street Journal, the funds were intended to move through two major American financial institutions, J.P. Morgan and Citigroup, before being deposited into an account in Turkey's state-owned Ziraat Bank. From there, the money would have been redirected to Russian company accounts within the same bank, effectively allowing Moscow to circumvent direct sanctions through the U.S. financial system. This arrangement would have allowed Russia to maintain a dollar reserve outside of its jurisdiction while avoiding detection. Turkey, in turn, had an incentive to participate due to its economic struggles and urgent need for foreign currency to stabilize its economy amid soaring inflation. By mid-2022, Russia had already transferred over $5 billion to Turkey as part of the operation. However, this quickly drew scrutiny from the U.S. Department of Justice, which intervened to block an additional $2 billion transfer through J.P. Morgan. These funds were subsequently frozen, and in 2024, U.S. prosecutors began considering their confiscation through a civil lawsuit. However, the Biden administration ultimately halted the legal action due to concern that seizing the funds could damage diplomatic relations with Turkey. Western ship owners have profited over $6 billion through the sale of aging oil tankers that are now part of Russia's shadow fleet, an investigation by Follow the Money and a coalition of international journalists have found. These vessels are being used to circumvent Western sanctions designed to limit Moscow's ability to export oil, a major revenue source for financing military operations against Ukraine. While the European Union prohibited direct sales of ships to Russian entities in late 2023, the fleet continues to operate through intermediaries registered in jurisdictions such as India, the Seychelles, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. Greek ship owners were the most active sellers of these tankers, followed by British and German companies. One notable case is Greek shipping magnate Paris Kassidokostas Latsis, whose company Marla Tankers sold two vessels, Fos Picasso and Fos Da Vinci, for $84 million in late 2024. The buyer, Vietnam-based Phuong Dong Petrol Transportation, was already involved in shadow fleet operations. Within a month, both 250-meter tankers were documented loading Russian crude at the Baltic port of Ust-Luga, each carrying a cargo estimated at around $50 million. The Kyiv School of Economics estimates that over 600 vessels now make up the illicit fleet, facilitating around 70% of Russia's oil exports. Since the start of the war, Russian fossil fuel revenues have reportedly exceeded 800 billion euros. Industry analysts argue that ship owners were well aware of their vessel's ultimate destination. As demand surged, aging tankers doubled in price, incentivizing sales to Russian-linked buyers. Lloyd's List analyst Michelle Weiss-Bachmann remarked that nearly every tanker over 15 years old ended up in Russian trade, with the financial motivation being unmistakable. Western governments have intensified efforts to disrupt Russia's shadow fleet, sanctioning over 300 tankers. The U.S. has led the actions, blacklisting around 235 vessels, including 155 in the final days of the Biden administration. The EU has sanctioned 68 tankers. The EU sanctions envoy stated that European ship owners are now required to report sales to third countries and confirm their vessels do not undermine sanctions. However, Follow the Money identified at least 32 European-owned tankers sold to the shadow fleet after these regulations were introduced. A shipbroker speaking anonymously summarized the motivation behind the transactions as an investor is only interested in one thing, and that is money. The ethical line is very thin. If it's allowed, they'll do it. Greek shipping companies led in total earnings, generating around $4 billion from the sales. British firms earned around $500 million from 22 tankers, while German companies collected around $200 million. Despite increasing regulatory pressure, sales of aging tankers to Russian-affiliated entities continue, ensuring that Moscow maintains access to global oil markets despite Western sanctions. Russia is preparing to expand its legal authority to seize frozen funds belonging to foreign companies and investors in response to Western sanctions. According to Reuters, the Russian government's legislative committee has approved a draft law detailing the process for confiscating foreign property as a retaliatory measure against countries that have frozen Russian assets. The bill, developed by Russia's Ministry of Justice, builds on a decree signed by President Putin in May of 2024, which targeted U.S. property and securities as potential compensation for losses incurred from asset seizures in the United States. The new law, however, broadens the framework to include all nations deemed, quote, unfriendly by Moscow, essentially those that have imposed sanctions on Russia over its war in Ukraine. Under the proposed legislation, Russian authorities, including the central bank, the prosecutor general's office, and other government agencies, would initiate legal action in arbitration courts to enforce asset seizures. The lawsuits would be directed against foreign governments that have frozen Russian assets, essentially making state entities the defendants in these cases. One key focus of the law is Type C accounts, which hold foreign investor funds that have been blocked in Russia unless the government grants a specific waiver. A source familiar with the bill's development suggested that these accounts could be targeted for confiscation, potentially impacting a wide range of investors, from private individuals to major U.S. investment funds. Collectively, billions of dollars remain frozen in these accounts, and the law proposes a significant escalation in Russia's economic standoff with the West. Also, for some reason, foreign investment in Russia has continued to decline sharply, reaching its lowest level in 15 years as of October 2024, according to the Moscow Times, citing data from the Central Bank of Russia. In the first 9 months of 2024, foreign investors withdrew an additional $44 billion in direct investments from Russia's real sector, reducing the total foreign investment volume to $235 billion. This follows significant capital flight in previous years, with $80 billion in direct foreign investment leaving Russia in 2023, and an even larger outflow of $138 billion in 2022, the first year of the full-scale invasion. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia's total FDI stock has dropped by nearly half, falling from nearly $500 billion before 2022 to $262 billion by late 2024. Despite President Putin's assurances of maximum openness to investors from BRICS nations, the central bank's data indicates no significant influx of capital. China, Russia's largest trading partner, has actively limited its investments in the country despite Putin's claims of a strategic partnership. Beijing has prohibited Chinese firms from investing in Russia's oil and gas sector, declined to finance the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline project, and instructed its automakers not to establish manufacturing plants in Russia. And lastly, we have international relations. The nation of Azerbaijan has officially informed Russia that it is terminating the activities of Russotrudnichestvo, the Russian federal agency responsible for cultural and humanitarian cooperation within its borders. The Azerbaijani news agency Report cited sources familiar with the matter, marking another significant diplomatic rift between Baku and Moscow. The decision follows the December 25th downing of Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243 near Aktau, Kazakhstan, by a Russian missile. The incident resulted in 38 fatalities. Azerbaijani authorities accused Russia of shooting down the aircraft using an air defense system, a claim which Moscow has denied. President Aliyev demanded accountability, compensation, and an admission of responsibility from Russia. While President Putin has issued an apology, he stopped short of accepting blame for the incident, which has caused tensions. According to sources, Azerbaijan remains firm in safeguarding its sovereignty and rejects any foreign interference in its internal affairs. Officials emphasize that the country is financially independent and does not require external aid, particularly when such assistance involves non-transparent activities that could have intelligence-related objectives. Azerbaijani law enforcement has taken control of the organization's headquarters in Baku, known as the, quote, Russian House. Authorities revealed that the organization had been operating in the country without proper registration, raising concerns about how it was allowed to function without such authorization. Minval, an Azerbaijani news outlet, reported that an investigation may be required to determine the reasons behind the oversight. Tochnyi, formerly known as the Federal Agency for the Commonwealth of Independent States Affairs, Compatriots Living Abroad, and International Humanitarian Cooperation, was established in 2008 to foster Russia's influence in post-Soviet states and beyond. The agency operates in 80 countries and reports directly to the Russian president. While it officially promotes cultural and humanitarian ties, it has been linked to pro-Russian rallies, propaganda campaigns, and possible intelligence operations in Europe. In Ukraine, Tochnyi was operated through the Russian Center for Science and Culture in Kyiv before its closure, and it actively promoted Kremlin narratives, including a revisionist history that labeled Ukraine's national poet Taras Shevchenko as a, quote, Russian-Ukrainian figure. In April 2021, President Volodymyr Zelensky imposed sanctions against the agency. Following Russia's full-scale invasion, the European Union sanctioned the organization, identifying it as a key tool in Moscow's soft power and hybrid warfare strategy. The EU determined that the agency functions as an umbrella organization, supporting networks of pro-Russian influence agents, funding propaganda campaigns, and advancing Kremlin-backed narratives under the guise of cultural cooperation. And last item for this week, Russia's naval presence in the Mediterranean appears to be coming to an end as its warships arrive at Syria's Tartarus port for what seems to be an evacuation following the collapse of the Assad regime, according to The Telegraph. This withdrawal, combined with NATO's growing presence in the Baltic, marks a significant realignment in naval power dynamics in the Mediterranean. Tartus, Russia's only naval base in the Mediterranean, has been a cornerstone of its regional strategy since the 1970s. Its importance grew substantially after 2015 when Moscow intervened in the Syrian civil war to support Bashar al-Assad. Following Turkey's decision to close the Bosphorus Strait to foreign warships in 2022, the base became Russia's only access point for projecting maritime power in the Mediterranean. However, the loss of the port now forces Moscow to operate in the region solely through long-range deployments from distant home ports. The retreat follows a rebel offensive that forced Russian forces to fall back to the port and the Khmeimim air base in November. By late January, military equipment was being staged for removal after failed negotiations with Syria's new ruling faction to maintain access to the port. A report from the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, suggests that the Russian Navy is now facing an uncertain future in the region, with analysts referring to it as a homeless Russian Mediterranean fleet. Potential alternatives for relocation remain limited. While Russia has explored basing operations in Algeria, Sudan, and Libya, none appear to be viable replacements. According to RUSI, Algeria has no strong incentive to host Russian forces, negotiations over Port Sudan remain stalled, and Libya's infrastructure poses logistical challenges. Despite the setback, Russia will likely continue operating in the Mediterranean, but its ability to maintain a permanent naval presence will be severely diminished. The withdrawal from Tartus coincides with Moscow's weakening position in the Baltic Sea, where NATO's expansion through Finland and Sweden has further constrained Russia's maritime operations. The Baltic has effectively become a NATO-controlled zone, complicating any Russian naval movement from its Arctic bases towards southern European waters, which would require passing through multiple strategic choke points. And that's it for the main headlines this week. We will now move to the next segment.
So the next segment up is going to be GAU, Germany to Ukraine. It's a pre-recorded segment, and I will play it right now.
Hello guys, as always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. This week, I don't have a lot to present, so this will be a short segment. We are starting with a 22-ton lorry load consisting of medical items, hospital beds, printers, monitors, pet food, sport shoes, light bulbs, a massive set of BVB t-shirts, and much more by the German city of Dortmund and the local organization Grenzenlose Wärme e.V. to the Ukrainian city of Zhytomyr. The transport started on Tuesday and followed two transports from Dortmund to Zhytomyr, which happens last month, where two canteen kitchens worth 120,000 euros for the reconstruction of destroyed schools and 48 generators for the emergency power supply during power outages were donated. On Friday, co-financed by the German government, more than 70 households of Vysokopilia received another batch of firewood from the Support Kherson Charity Fund. Solid fuel is being donated to Ukraine on a regular basis, and it was only in November 2024, so a couple of months ago, that Germany actually increased its humanitarian aid budget by 200 million euros to finance additional solid fuel like firewood, among other things. And that's it for my segment, so back to you, Joseph.
Well, I think now we'll turn it over to Mr. Bionade for his report. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me well.
Loud and clear, mate.
Nice. Yeah. All right. We are talking about the very stirring up interesting things. Unprecedented things which are happening in the US and which effects this will have on Ukraine. Especially, we are talking about USAID or USAID. Most of you know, or maybe some did not know what this is. Basically, it's a part of the US government which was helping out many countries around the world. Smaller programs, bringing much of soft power to the US. I don't want to go into the details and US politics too deeply, but I think most of you have seen and followed, and there are many YouTubers out who spoke about this topic, what's happening in the US. It seems like on the 1st of February this year, Elon Musk and his Zoomer squad showed up at the USAID department, basically the headquarters. Saturday evening, wanted entrance, and then later decided to shut it all down. Later, it seems President Trump said it will be all shut down. And this is a complicated topic because all the funding for projects in countries like Ukraine, these are long-term projects. Many of these projects we will talk about today are projects which are already finished or getting funding step by step. But there are also many programs which are running until 2027, 2028. This is funding which is, as far as I know, already approved by Congress. Like I said earlier, unprecedented things are happening in the US. So it's not really clear what was happening and what will be happening. For now, as far as I know, a judge basically blocked the layoff and the I don't know how to call it. And guys on the panel, help me here onto words if you have like better words for this. But like, a judge basically blocked this order. Basically said like, this has to continue. This is all proof funding, and you cannot basically just say like this department is winded down. So or this institution is winded down. So we are. I hope it's not a farewell to USAID what we are doing here today. We just want to talk a bit about the programs, what they were actually doing, because there are many misinformation and false info's about what USAID actually did. So USAID did not fund NAVO, and USAID did not fund pictures with Zelensky or someone else. We will actually talk about the programs which were deployed in Ukraine. Not all programs, because it's quite a lot of programs, but it's different focuses, different programs which are really helping Ukraine and are helping in a way which you will see are significant, but very helpful, and not even that much of money which is invested. I have with me here today Jonathan, who will support me a bit in this segment. And
Hey,
Jonathan.
The impact of this decision on the global south, the grim impact, has been chronicled by many analysts. Well, some analysts. I think the correct quantifier is here. You're going to focus on humanitarian. Well, there's quite a range that you mentioned there,
Yeah.
Bionade. So, where would you like to begin? Humanitarian and development, veteran rehabilitation. USAID covered a huge range of support.
Yeah, it's a whole
Ukraine.
spectrum. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it's a whole spectrum of support, and most of the information we got thankfully to the great reporting of the ministry, the Ukrainian Ministry of Reconstruction, right? And yeah, you will see some pictures and some things about what happened, what they did, and I would say let's maybe start a bit with the energy infrastructure, right, Jonathan?
Sure. Whatever suits you. We can see, our viewers can see in front of us here the B-roll playing of agriculture. If you,
yeah,
if you want to start there, that would be.
Yeah,
cool.
let's start with the agriculture. That's actually a good thing. Let me just pull it up here. Where's the agriculture? Oh, here it is. So basically, one of the USAID programs, the AGRI, Agri Ukraine program, is supporting the agricultural resilience and the exports. To go into details here, I would say let's do it in this way that we, yeah. So that's the program. So basically, Ukraine's agriculture sector is getting supported here, and the aim is to ensure uninterrupted export capabilities despite the wartime challenges, right? We have the issue with the Black Sea. We had many initiatives, and most of these initiatives were supported by USAID in different kinds of ways. So they supported with money. Often they support also with knowledge, right? They support with knowledge, for example, engineers, advisors. They have legal advisors, legal teams working in Ukraine, right? Which are often Ukrainians helping to integrate legislation to all these kind of topics, right? Where is it needed? Because you cannot just start a program or do a support thing, right? You need a legislation for this. You need a program, and this is one vital part what USAID did. I will just go to the key factors here. What USAID Agri program did in Ukraine. And from the financial support side, 350 million investments. Also additional 370 million from the private sector and other donors for agriculture production export. This means the Danube ports were expanded, right? The USAID supported the infrastructure updates at the Danube ports. This increased export capacity, and also there were basically this was basically an alternative route to the Black Sea itself. So the investment included special grain handling equipment and operational improvements to handle higher export volumes, right? So this is where advisors come in, right, from big companies or from the USAID themselves, who know how to deal with these things. Then the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which delivered millions of tons of agriculture products to the global markets. Helped by establishing these overland export corridors, and also there was a very important thing about provision of seeds and fertilizers. So the USAID helped out with distribution and ensuring crop continuity in Ukraine, right? So that it's organized all over Ukraine. How are crops organized? And yeah, and the very important thing was also support for the credit unions. Like many agricultural sectors, there are credit unions for agricultural operations in Ukraine, which are helping farmers especially to get loans, to get new tractors and other things. And yeah, that's a very important work, and that's what the Ukraine Agri program, for example,
And
did.
at a macro level, Bionade, you've just mentioned this affects millions of people, potentially affects millions of people through the Black Sea Grain Initiative, affecting the distribution of foods. We already know the impact this has had on the global South, but also at a local level, the kind of it's not just money for large scale operations. It's also vital support for local operations that you can see here on we can see here on our screen, and the
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
values that come along with this kind of funding, which I think our viewers might have seen earlier, things like equal opportunities for women in projects. This the
Yeah.
potential cessation of this would be absolutely disastrous for a great many people.
Yeah, and as you can see, like there was like 350 million from USAID investments, and then 370 million from private sector donors, and this is all money which is making things possible, right? This is all money which is invested in things which are multiplying Ukraine's chances and chances of the Ukrainian people to cope with the situation. All right. Since we have quite a long list, Jonathan, let's go to the next topic, and I would say let's go to the energy security, because, like, I think this is a very important project where USAID really provided much help. The USAID has basically the ESP program, the Energy Security Program, which is to strengthen Ukraine's heating infrastructure and providing alternative heating solutions, diversify energy sources, and enhancing energy independence, and everything else about infrastructure. So let's start with the first thing they did. And these were mobile boiler houses, which operate on solid fuels and are equipped with boiler pumps, so boilers, pumps, and water purifying systems. Power supply systems, pipeline, and everything what you need, drainage, generators. These are units designed to minimize gas consumption, making Ukraine's heating infrastructure more energy resilient, and are essential for providing backup heating and hot water to hospitals, schools, elderly care facilities, and basically critical infrastructure. USAID initially delivered 48 of these mobile boiler houses in 2023, and then the total has risen to 114 now across 14 regions. This investment was $5.6 million, but you can imagine what kind of people you reach with just this $5.6 million. Then there was another program from the ESP, which were cogeneration units. These are units, like you can see here on the screen right now, right? Often containers which are delivered, and basically these cogeneration units supply both heat and electricity. Run on gas mostly, so there's basically a gas burner who is heating up steam to generate electricity, and also the heat which is not really used, which would be like excess heat, is used to heat the water basically for warm water use, right? So delivered were 2 units of 530 kilowatt and 350 kilowatt capacity to the Lutsk region. It's in the northeast of Ukraine, northwest of Ukraine. Basically, this helps around 20,000 residents in 114 multi-story buildings. 7 kindergartens, 4 schools, 2 medical institutions are getting supported. Also, they delivered 39 gas piston cogeneration units. 18 were installed as of July 2024. We don't have any more updates on this, but basically, yeah, they sending out these units, which really helped in 2023 and early 2024 to go to the hard times.
And thanks, Bionade. Just to be clear, the potential cessation of US aid to the Ukrainian energy sector doesn't necessarily mean the stopping of these particular plants that our viewers can see now. but it has the potential to impact them in the future.
Oh yeah, more deliveries in the future, right? Like these are programs which are already done, where just like more things would be supplied. But it's we're talking about 4,200 generators, 55 transformators, 125 kilometers of heating pipelines, and 74 excavators, right? So from an investment perspective, it's not that much money, but like it's really helping Ukraine, and it's already there, and everything what more comes is really helpful, right?
Right. Yeah. Whatever topic you want to move on to next is fine by me, Bionade. That local level story from the Vinnytsia Veterans Hub is one I'm kind of keen to bring up, because they posted on the 26th of January about the impacts of USAID not being funded to them. And this impact basically meant that they were having to fundraise online for the first time since 2018. So yeah,
Wow.
so this impact at that local level is happening. It is leading, according to places like the Vinnytsia Veterans Hub, to significant deleterious impact on these organizations and the broad range of services that they provide. We're talking in terms of this particular place, we're talking therapeutic treatment for veterans, but we're also talking about support for families and for the people who support the veterans. So this is something which is extremely
I
significant.
can give you
And
I
lack of
can give you a
hygiene,
short overview,
disease. This kind of impact is life changing for those impacted.
Yeah. So actually, you're right. It's a good example. Veteran Hub, which is a Ukrainian nonprofit, which was supported. Right. We heard about like the nonprofit organizations which get supported by USAID and what they do, or the talk about it. And the actual thing, one of these organizations, Veterans Hub, which got supported. What do they do? So they are in Vinnytsia, which is like in central Ukraine. They provided psychological support, legal assistance, employment services, community support, and educational opportunities. Right. Right now, the support from USAID was operational support, so they covered some of the expenses such as rent, staffing, infrastructure, and cost for the Vinnytsia branch. They founded some mental health programs. They made employment initiatives. So basically, veterans can look for job fairs and other nice things, right? Job training and legal aid services, right? But yeah, these are all things which totally make sense and are totally needed. As far for the funding, my information I have found is the Vinnytsia City Council allocated around 100,000 euros in emergency funding to temporarily support the affected programs, which might or not might be affected by USAID shutdown or not shutdown. We will see. But yeah, it's basically for 3 months to support this operating things, and yeah, we will see how it works out. But
Yeah,
important
other
program.
sources of funding do potentially exist. That this has become clear, but the interruption of the funding has in itself a significant impact on, like you say, these people's lives and the resources and support accessible and the opportunities that they that are open to them.
Yeah. Jonathan, we don't have too much time today because we have a full
we do,
stream of
mate.
people. So I'm having so many interesting topics. I think we will continue this maybe next week. I'm in Ukraine possibly. So we will see. But yeah, 2 or 3 quick points I wanted to mention, or programs I wanted to show, because this is what is often talked about, especially in social media, and especially by the American voters, who were very concerned about what's happening to the money and all the corruption in Ukraine. So there was an USAID program, actually, the USAID, USAID, TAPAS program, which aimed to enhance transparency and reducing corruption through e-government reforms. Who would have known? The project 2016 to 2024, so this is all done, was a 53 million initiative. 53 million, yeah. That focused on using digital solutions to improve governments and reducing corruption in Ukraine. Key components included the e-procurement system, Prozoro system, developed was it basically as an electronic procurement system, which already saved Ukraine 9 billion by promoting transparency and accountability in public spending. They had open data expansion. Basically, they facilitated the publication of government data, empowered citizens and businesses to access critical information, and foster transparency. And digitization of public services, e-services, e-businesses. Some of you might know Ukraine is quite digitalized. DIA is a program. I am not sure how much Ukraine was in, USAID was involved in the DIA initiative by Ukraine, but yeah, it's very digitalized. So yeah, USAID's anti-corruption program, which is luckily this part is already finalized, but would be a shame if the US government, which is so concerned about corruption in Ukraine, would be cutting their own programs to watch corruption in Ukraine. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Another important
Bionade.
topic. You, Jonathan, you remember the Kakhovka Dam, the ecocide in Ukraine, right? Yeah. The destruction June 2023. The USAID ERA, this is an economic resilience activity, basically played a pivotal role in addressing water supply disruption for 1 million residents across affected regions. So what happened here? Key contributions were 145-kilometer water pipeline provided by USAID. Engagement of CDM engineers in Ukraine to perform comprehensive technical and economic review of the project. The review resulted in 925 recommendations, of which 79% were adopted by Ukraine's Agency for Restoration. The pipeline which was built featured 6 pump stations. Each pump station has 4 pumps to manage backup, integrated with a pipeline filtration system, and I think it's all completed now. I mean, it's quite an impressive project. I'm not sure how big the funding was. I don't think it was
Well, it stands
too
as,
much.
stands as a testament to US support at that time, and
yeah,
you know, at some point in the future,
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
may this continue.
yeah.
Thanks.
We really hope so. We really hope so. Yeah, we have many other points, like the Dream program you already know, where they also supported. But one point I wanted to highlight here also, it's sometimes just things like USAID provided 20 tons of steel from passive protection of energy facilities. So basically what happened here, Ukraine's transformers and everything getting attacked all the time. What did they do? They built passive defense around it, which means the transformer is not an open air transformer anymore. This transformer needs, basically a building around it. So Ukraine built, small buildings around the transformers, put in good ventilation, so they're still getting passively cooled by the air. And USAID provided 20,000 tons of steel for this passive
Okay.
passive defensive systems, right? So it can be donations like this, and often these donations and often these things are not super expensive. Often it's very much knowledge, experts, advisors, political integration, but also making people able to help themselves, right? Going into key points of the whole process chain and saying like, okay, we are making you able to do this, right? We are giving you the funding, and with this funding, you will be able to get much more, to attract more funding, to get more help, to do more, and it's a great thing. So I really don't see the big issue of the US government there, but we will see how it works out. We just really can hope that this will come to a good end.
Indeed.
If anyone has any questions about any USAID programs, I think we have like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then we have to move to the next segment. But yeah, there are a couple of more topics I'm happily talking about in the next couple of weeks. I think this topic will be an ongoing topic, and yeah, if you have questions, be free to ask, and also in our comment section.
I think you cover that pretty comprehensively, Bionade. Thank you.
So one thing I see that chat is asking about is like if we can share the human cost of cutting this aid. I'm sure it's possible to somehow put out the numbers, but it's really difficult to calculate, I guess, the exact human cost. But
no, and this is the thing, right? Why I mentioned like these programs are really. It's not the money which is put into the programs, right? Sometimes it's 5 million, sometimes it's 100 million, right? These programs are making many parts able to get more funding. We have seen this with the one program where the US spent 350 million, and the private sector said like, oh, that's the right sign, right? The private donors gave 370 million. And for example, if you remember the whole discussion about the railway gauge between Ukraine and Europe, right? They have different sizes of railways. This was an investment what USAID did, where they supported. So made them able to trade more freely with all of Europe and many other countries which are connected to their railway network. How to measure this in human financial costs or like these are multiplicators, right? If this program exists, Ukraine is able to do magnitudes more than it does before. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't do it. To the pictures which are on here, there was a picture before of a bench. Maybe you have seen it. This is a bench actually. Maybe we can get the picture back.
I'm trying.
We had before. No worries. Basically, this bench I have. Nice. So you can see here USAID at the side. This is in Uzhhorod. I was there visiting friends, and I saw this bench and I said like, "Oh, USAID, make a picture of this." These are things which are provided, which are not like very expensive, not having sometimes making a big difference. But like for me, it was nice to sit there in Uzhhorod at the Ush, at the Napka, how they call it there, at the river, and just see like, oh, it's USAID, and you have kind of a name, a brand, soft power. The US is there. I think this is what it was sought for, and it made a good impression. I mean, at least it made a good enough impression to for me to see this and say like, oh, let's take a picture about this. I've heard about this organization before, and I only heard good things about them.
Yep. One thing I guess is important to comment is that it's not necessarily just a monetary investment, but also I assume at least the USAID is operating similarly to other aid programs, and that's at least how I've seen that they also have a lot of advisors that help. It's not just the money itself; it's expertise as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like in many programs, like I mentioned, this is like advisors, engineers, what I mentioned before, right? We can see here these in the picture these companies which are there. We talked about this ULEAD, for example, which is a European project. Basically, these projects employ people in Ukrainians, which help to draft legislature for the parliaments to include these programs. These programs get financing, but these programs need to be included somehow. These programs need to have the legal framework and everything, right? These programs need to have the correct engineering processes, funding, partners they work with, whatever. Like it's a fucking giant. I'm sorry for the word. It's a giant complex system, and they all have to do basically their work. And there are multiple programs. There is a USAID, there's ULEAD, there's UKAID, there's Polska Pomoc, like you can see. The UN is working, and everything else. So yeah, it's really a huge sector of organizations, and how they basically work there, and helping to implement all these projects.
Okay, I don't think there were any other questions in chat, but yeah, well, there's a question about what is the danger of Ukraine not having media funding to talk about the ramification of the invasion, and I guess, I mean, the USAID program is not the only program that is funding media, so it's not gonna, cut all funding for all media organizations. But I mean, it will have an impact if they get less funding, of course. No?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like there are, I know at least from other organizations which are like helping in different oblasts, and especially in frontline regions, independent journalists and independent journalist organizations. And it's when I started to do this list about the USAID programs, like it's hard to factor in how many sectors are actually like USAID was involved, because it's so much different sectors, so much work there involved. Basically, every time something happened, they showed like, what can we do? What connections have we? What programs can we start? And these are all well-connected people who are often for a long time into politics, have their connections, work with embassies, work with ambassadors, work with the whole system, right? That's really complex. So yeah, that's why it's for myself so aggregating and mind-boggling that some guy who bought Twitter 1.5 years ago comes in and says like, let's push some buttons, pull some power lines and see what happens. It's just really crazy.
Okay. Joseph, do you have any things before we go ahead, or? I guess not. Well, I'm interested to continue this topic. So if we can continue reporting on it, and maybe more developments around it, maybe there's more information next week, then if you're around, or if you're back in 2 weeks, then we can talk about it.
I have at least I have at least 6 or 7 or 8 more programs we can talk about, which USAID did. So yeah, and that's not end of the line. So there are programs, like I said, which are already pre-funded until 2027, 2028, and longer, which we have to see how it works out. But I hope the democratic process somehow prevails in the US.
Okay. Since Joseph is AFK, I'm going to say thank you, Bionade, and thank you, Jonathan, and then welcome to Gesh. Welcome back.
Hello. Good evening.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I hope all of you as well, as much as possible.
So it was a very busy week, wasn't it?
Yeah, life is getting busier and busier, but I mean, there are reasons for that, and the reasons are mostly good, so it's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, so
All
to
right.
change, there was some positive news in the sense that something happened in Kursk. And do you want to start with that, or do you want to start with something else?
Oh yeah, I think I'll start with Kursk. Wait, let me figure out if I have the correct. Yeah, that should be the correct window. I will share my window. Yeah. All right. Just let me see where we are. On the 6th of February, Ukraine started a counterattack in Kursk. To be precise, they went through Makhnovka towards Ulanok, towards like this route. As far as we know now, I think they've reached this village here. But yeah, let's start at the beginning. How this could have happened, who is involved, what happened before. So, this is the city or the village of Makhnovka. In January 2025, there was a lot of fighting around this one. The Russians, the 11th Air Assault Brigade of the Russians, captured it briefly, or were in Makhnovka briefly. But throughout January, the Ukrainians managed to throw them back out of the village again and recapture it. During this process, there was also a lot of media reports from the Russians that they kind of felt abandoned from the command, and that the command did a lot of mistakes, etc. And so by roughly the end of January, the Ukrainians controlled Makhnovka again. This also was possible due to support of the Ukrainian 82nd Air Assault Brigade, which was normally stationed more on the western side of the Kursk front line, and also supported in recapturing this, together with the 33rd Assault Regiment and the 61st Mechanized Brigade. And then on the 6th of February, Ukraine managed to penetrate the Russian lines here. This was likely possible due to two things. First of all, the 11th Air Assault Brigade was weakened by the fighting in Makhnovka, by the losses in Makhnovka. And second of all, there were reports that the 11th Air Assault Brigade reported some that they controlled territory that they didn't actually control, which put a hole into the line that the Ukrainians managed to use. Exactly. So who is involved on the Ukrainian side in this attack? It's likely the 82nd Air Assault Brigade, which, as I said before, helped with retaking Makhnovka, and the 78th Air Assault Regiment. An interesting thing about the 78th Air Assault Regiment, there were also reports that they were involved in January in the attack in Berlin. As you remember, that one didn't go that well in the end. It was not anything catastrophic, but the Russians likely managed to retake it, the area, or they highly likely retook all the area that the Ukrainians controlled. And this time they were involved as well. A short detail why we figured this out, or how we figured this out initially. The vehicles in this area that we spotted, one of them was a VAB, and then we checked it was quite a simple thing, actually. We checked on military land which units are using the VAB, because they have a kind of a database of all the Ukrainian units and which vehicles they use. Sadly, their search function is sometimes a bit dysfunctional, but the only unit in Kursk that's actually using this vehicle type is the 78th Air Assault Regiment. This one. And then our suspicions were confirmed on the next day, where both the 82nd Air Assault Brigade and the 78th Air Assault Regiment posted videos from this attack. Yes, exactly. For now, we can't fully say I would wait to assess this attack until the end to make a proper statement about it, if it was a full success or not, obviously. But for now, it looks really good. Today there was also a Russian counterattack that was repelled. You can see it here. Muklausen did a geolocation about it. We have it here. The 82nd Air Assault Brigade repelled the 11th Russian Air Assault Brigade. We know it's the 11th in this case because, first of all, we had Kriegsforscher telling us, and which is also very interesting, BMPs were involved. And the 11th Air Assault Brigade is one of the very few Russian VDV units that's not using BMDs, but BMPs, which is a different kind of armored vehicle. Exactly. And so far, it looks quite successful what the Ukrainians are doing. By doing this, they're also putting the Russian effort around Kurilovka in huge peril. And if they manage to advance further, they might put this whole area, like also the recently captured Plekovo, under huge pressure. The Russians managed to capture Plekovo around beginning of December 2024, and depending on the success of the Ukrainians, they might be thrown out again. But this is obviously huge speculation. We can't know any of this for sure now. And a question obviously is, why didn't the Ukrainians also attack from the south here? And one reason for this that I heard is all this area around here is very hard to traverse because it's more swampy and marshy, and that's why it's hard to actually build up significant forces here and to actually advance through here. With the attack here, what we have seen is around 1 to 2 dozen vehicles of the Ukrainians, maybe around 150 soldiers, something around that one that was reported from the Russian side at least. So yes, we will see how this develops, and I'm very curious and hopeful that this one will be more successful than the attack around Berlin that we've seen last month.
If you zoom in on the Ukrainian side of the border, just south, you'll see also that there's not a lot of major roads going towards the border, and all the roads that are leading up to the border are very, very small. It's
yeah, you have to zoom in a lot to see that road.
Yeah. And of course, this is not facilitating buildup of forces quickly that would be needed to support an attack from the south. And I remember this was an issue as well back in the very beginning, I guess, end of August, when Ukraine sent an assault towards Borki and also toward Bielitsa. There was no way of really reinforcing from the south, which seemed to be an issue. So that is a tactical issue there, I would say. But if Ukraine would be able to capture that pocket, then improving the infrastructure there would have been possible.
Yes. So sorry, I was a bit phased out while you talked, so maybe I'm repeating something now.
No worries.
A huge thing why Ukraine is also doing this counterattack is that their main supply route into Kursk is this road, and the Russians have come very close to this road and are able to control it more and more with artillery and FPV drones, especially with the fiber optic guided drones. So it's very important to push the Russians back from this road so they can sustain the supply into the Kursk salient. Exactly. Wait, there's a question in chat. Near Kurilovka.
So what seems fascinating is the apparent lack of action near Kurilovka up to the Psel, considering that the riverbank would offer a decent defensive area. I wonder why that is. That's a question from Ryan E.
That's indeed a good question. I have no idea. I mean, this is the river Psel, by the way. So it would indeed be very, very good for the Ukrainians to push the Russians back to this river line so they can control it again. I mean, we have seen in around Chasiv Yar how even a small body of water incredibly inhibits the offensive action. I mean, around Chasiv Yar or Bakhmut Channel, there's this canal that's really holding back the Russians and really making it hard for them to advance at all. So yeah, it would actually. I haven't put any thought into this at all before, but yes, it would make a lot of sense for the Ukrainians to try to push the Russians back there. You're right. Very good question. And another thing that I want to put some focus on today is actually Pokrovsk, our favorite area, I know. And around Pokrovsk, the Ukrainians have recently done some counterattacks, especially around Kotline and Pishane. And we are now, the Russians are complaining that they are under heavy pressure in this salient, that the Ukrainians have huge fire control over them. I mean, if you look, it's quite a condensed area, and in this very condensed area, there's a lot of Russian forces as well, namely around 3 to 4 brigades in one motor rifle division. Obviously, you have to know it's not that these whole brigades and the division is in there, and that's not how war works. That's not how warfare works. It's always, rotations. Elements of units are getting pushed forward to the front line and stationed there. Then they get pulled off the line again after some time, and the next company gets moved in, etc. So you never have like if you say a brigade has 4,000 men, then it's not those 4,000 men fighting for Kotline. It's a fraction of this men, but it's always only a fraction of a brigade that's actually involved in active fighting. That's why when you hear like the Russians have 100,000 men in a certain area, for example, pushing for Pokrovsk or something, it's not that those 100,000 men are along this front line. It's like there are constant rotations going on, because yes, it's not possible to have someone at the zero line for too long. Just as a small educational, or like to put some perspective into those numbers as well sometimes, because there are a lot of people who go around and claim insane numbers of troops involved in certain actions which make no sense. But yes, they do have a lot of units in these areas, the Russians.
I mean,
And-
this
sorry.
area, I just wanted to say this area, the pocket between the marshy riverlands between Pishane and Uspenivka and the north,
Yeah.
they really don't have a lot of freedom of movement in
No.
and out there. And when they were on the offensive and the Ukrainians were on the back foot, of course, it was easier to probably push people and supplies through. But if Ukraine can spare enough people and units to actually put pressure back on the Russian in such an area where the freedom of movement is really limited, then that will definitely be difficult for them, especially when they were used to more of a permissive environment when Ukraine was on the back foot a couple of months ago there.
Yes, I mean, as you can also easily see, there are no proper supply roads going in there. There's no roads leading straight in there. It's really hard for them to actually move through this area. And I mean, it would be incredible if Ukraine manages to push this back, because this is like endangering Pokrovsk a lot, together with obviously the action in the east. But yes, it would be, and as I said, I'd say the main focus of the Russians right now in Pokrovsk is this area, number one. Then this area is also a huge focus of them. For example, the two of the brigades that were involved in capturing Kurokovo were subsequently moved towards this area. Like basically, even before Kurokovo was fully captured, the Russians started to send those units over there, namely the 5th and the 110th Motor Rifle Brigade. And they are now like, this area was kinda like relatively quiet before that, but at the end of when was it again? Yeah, end of December and beginning of January, beginning of January 2025, the Russians started to scale up operations there a lot. And some of the Ukrainian fire brigade units, like for example, the Ukrainians have a lot of the assault battalions and the assault regiments. They're being used to stop Russians in the very, very hot areas, where the Russians are advancing fast. Then the Ukrainians, for example, throw in the 33rd Assault Regiment or the 225th Assault Regiment to stop the Russians. They are like deployed all over the front. Just a quick example for that. The 33rd Assault Regiment that I mentioned earlier for Makhnovka, it was in Makhnovka in the middle of when was it? Sorry, in the middle of January. At the same time, basically, they were fighting around Terny and trying to stop the Russians to push further from Ivanivka. And at the end of January, we have seen footage of them near Velika Novosilka. So yes, those units are basically the Ukrainian rapid response units, which they use to help in the very, very hot areas. So yes, back again to Pokrovsk with the focus, the second one being here. We also did a piece on that, something that I wanted to mention as well. Recently, I started to work with a few colleagues on a new project. Sorry, where do I have it? The Unit Observer project. It's also on Blue Sky. And in this project, we generally talk about everything unit related, and also like the Russian movements or Ukrainian movements of units. And we also did a piece on this movement of the 110th and 5th. You can see here we also put sources for everything. So if you want to get into the details and how we determine those movements, etc., you can look into the documents and see exactly how we determine this. For example, via MIA reports or via geolocations. And yeah, here we talked, for example, about the movement of the 5th and 110th Motor Rifle Brigade, which was brought over from Kurokovo. Just a small mention of this. So if you're interested in that stuff and you want to educate yourself more on this, etc., you can give it a follow. A little bit of a self plug, I know, but yes.
Yeah, Tochnyi is following the account, and I'll try to amplify it because it's a very good source of updated, also real-time information, or not real-time, but very close to real-time compared
as
to
close as you can get, basically.
So thank you for that project. It's actually very educating for me as well.
Yes, I mean, I kind of want to put a piece on Tochnyi as well on how I do some of this stuff, or generally also some educational stuff about the Russian army and how they're organized, or how to all these details. So yes, moving back to here, I mean, those were the two main things I wanted to put a focus on. Yes, is there... Oh yeah, one more thing. This is a bit concerning, in my opinion, that the Ukrainians haven't managed to throw the Russians back over the Oskil. Yes, I have no idea what's going on here. If you're interested who is involved here, it's the 25th Russian Motor Rifle Brigade, and it's 105th and 144th Motor Rifle Regiments. They're pushing over here into Tvorichna and also over into Novomlinsk, and the Ukrainians have basically lost the defensive line along the... Oh, sorry, that's the Oskil. Sorry, there was a comment in the chat, and I was a bit confused for a second.
No, it's the Oskil River, but it's been one of those very concerning reports from last week, actually.
Yes, the Russians have managed to establish a bridgehead here, and the Ukrainians sadly aren't able to throw them back out. Even though, let's say it like that, the 25th Russian Brigade doesn't have the best reputation amongst the soldiers and the relatives. So, but they are very, very ruthless in the use of their soldiers. They are there were some reports that this brigade basically received soldiers, immediately marked them as MIA, like as soon as receiving them, then sent them onto assault missions, and then managed to capture positions without losing anybody, because the soldiers that they used were actually MIA before. That's how this brigade operates. It's absolutely insane. I mean, generally the circumstances within the Russian army right now are inhumane, to say the least. We sometimes criticize some stuff that the Ukrainians do, some movements or some decisions, but it's like never even any close comparison to the madness that's going on in the Russian army.
No, I mean, it's just getting worse and worse. But this movement, it seems to be coordinated in a sense. They're also pushing in the south and have been for some time. And this has been an area where Ukraine has been relatively good at keeping Russians out without too much movement, and it's probably because of the river, the forest, etc.
Exactly.
Where Ukraine has been pretty good at defending.
Also, Kyiv, they held it for months.
Yeah. And also, the area around Liman has been a place where a lot of action is taking place, or Liman Persia, I mean. But the concerning part is that this starts to threaten Kupiansk and all the settlements next to it. So.
Yep. And if they manage to get Kupiansk, they have not then fully established their control over the Oskil River, and they are then have full movement over it, and they are not restrained by it any longer that much, which is a huge problem. Like the Oskil River is such an important, like they are not allowed to come there, let's say it like this, otherwise it would be put so much pressure on them, and that's why this is so critical, because they have managed to cross the Oskil River here.
Yeah, and we'll just have to hope that Ukraine manages to respond to this somehow. But also in the south, it's close to Sankove. If they manage to cross there, it's pretty damn critical. But there is a lot more difficult to cross, of course, because the river is a lot wider, and I think that bridge is gone.
Yeah, it's no more.
Yeah.
The fighting here is actually kind of stabilized around Kolyakivka and Kolesnikivka. There's also been over the last month some counterattacks from Ukrainians retaking some territory, etc. There's like, for example, if you want to know, the 2nd Russian Motor Rifle Division is around this area from Kislivka until Kolesnikivka, and the Russian 47th is it the 47th? Wait, tank division, yeah, exactly. 47th tank division is stationed around here and fighting towards Tsaritsove. An area where the Russians had advanced a bit in the recent months is this area around Lotsova and Zeleny High. And there's also still heavy fighting going on there. Like just yesterday, we got a new video from Stepi, where the 3rd Assault Brigade of the Ukrainians destroyed some Russian tanks that tried to advance towards Kompanki, for example. And yes, it's a very, very hot area as well. With, for example, from Tabaivka till Stepi, this is one Russian army deployed here, the first tank army of the Russians.
So Bielitz is asking a question. Is Freikorps still there?
It's a very stupid question. I mean, Freikorps, it's like three guys. I don't know. I don't track three soldiers.
Okay. So Bielitz, you got your answer. By the way, Bielitz is a friend of ours. So.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a troll. Yes.
So if you don't have any thing on the list, I have a question, because recently there was a video released by the 3rd Assault Brigade. And since you just mentioned them, I remembered.
Yeah.
Where there's a bunch of civilian vehicles, basically an entire assault made up of Ladas and buggies from civilian cars that have been chopped off, or they remove everything except the essential parts of the vehicle. And it seems, at least from the video, that it got pretty much annihilated by Ukraine. Have you geolocated, or do you know if it's been geolocated, by the way?
I don't know that, but this is also something that we can build on, because we have seen more and more civilian vehicles being used by the Russians, and now more like we had the Chinese buggy phase where they used the Chinese golf carts, and now we are seeing more and more Ladas of the Russians. Their tank and AFV losses have actually dropped over the recent few months. Like they had a ton of them in the middle of 2024, if I remember correctly, but now they have dropped off. But the use of civilian vehicles and the losses of civilian vehicles have skyrocketed. And you need to know, those vehicles are not only way less armored than anything else, like a BTR, a BMP, or a tank. They are also way, way worse at traversing the terrain and getting stuck way more. And that also, speed is such an important thing, because if you're too long in one spot, then the enemy will know that you're there. I mean, in this case, the Ukrainians, and they will spot you and they will send the FPVs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting development.
Would you guys say we're in the donkey phase now?
The donkeys. It's very normal to use donkeys in your army. Haven't you heard? It was a very funny statement of the Russians. Yeah, I think it was some military district that said, no, it's completely normal to use donkeys for logistics. That's always been done.
Well, I have my reservations against that, but I'm a little bit skeptical towards using that example as like
don't overblow it.
Yeah, like we've seen a few posts of it, but if that's becomes symptomatic, going forward, then I would rather include that in the analysis of the Russian army, because it's certainly not a normal thing.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Erlend. A humble, but you're right to point that out to clarify for people. The context: there was a video released of them using a donkey. One video does not a normal situation make.
Yeah. Sorry. The donkey thing is more of a joke, but the Ladas, this is something serious. All the Ladas being used instead of armored vehicles. This is way, way more serious. Yeah. Because we have actual proof and, development over time for this. I mean, sorry, I don't have the numbers right now. I didn't really sadly prepare much for today's segment. I was this is kind of off my head, all this stuff. But yes, so yeah, we had a question in chat from Kieresh Schmidlin. Andrew talked in his last live that week about some movements near Vasilivka, Zaporizhzhia. Vasilivka, I know about movements near Kamyansk. Yeah, also, yeah, it's near Vasilivka. Sorry, I don't know every Ukrainian town by heart, sadly, but yeah, there has been increased presence of the Ukrainians now south of Kamyansk. We had a video geolocated by GIG that shows Russian strikes on Ukrainian vehicles. The really important thing in this video, as GIG pointed out to me, is that it's not where the Ukrainian vehicles are, but in these videos. Wait, let's see if I can. I can't really show it properly. Wait, if I find it, maybe give me a second. Hopefully, GIG didn't post too much since then. Then I can show you on the footage, because it's something interesting to look out for. Yes, exactly. This is the footage. So the interesting stuff here is not right. It's the wrong video. This one is it? Yeah. It's not that there's a Ukrainian tank here. The interesting stuff is the thing around it, the tracks. This is an established path that the Ukrainians now have used multiple times, and this means that the Ukrainians managed to kind of take relatively safe control over this area. As you see, there's not many vehicle losses around here, so they managed to traverse this land without getting hit by FPVs all that much. So yes, the Ukrainians have advanced a bit further south of Kamyansk, and there's also been a new tactical sign spotted there. Let's see if we can see it in this video. Yep, here we go. The two vertical lines, and it's interesting what this means if they have some plans there. It's certainly an area where you have to watch out a bit. I mean, it doesn't have to mean anything, but something to watch out for the future.
I just want to mention that in that area, it's been kind of it's been still stand since 2022, more or less. I mean, there was some movement or some offensive action by both sides, but the lines have not moved at all.
Look, that's 2023.
Yeah,
it's like a few kilometers since then.
Yeah. So that's kind of important. Ukraine did push south a little bit during the offensive that year, but nothing more. And there was a lot of people shouting about Kamyansk and south of Kamyansk as a possible approach for Ukraine, but it's not somewhere we've seen major action at all. It's interesting that they've, obviously at least changing tactics in the area.
Certainly. So, I mean, the main focus still lays not to the south, not around Zaporizhzhia, not around Kherson. Like 90% of the focus is Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv, and obviously also Kursk. There's some stuff still happening in northern Kharkiv, but this is also rather small action. I mean, yeah, some Russian units are committed. There are some Ukrainians, obviously, as well, but it's not like focus is certainly elsewhere.
If you look back on Kamyansk, we don't need to think that there's a sign that this is a sign that Ukraine will do a major offensive in the area or anything like this. It could also be just a tactical decision that we need this land to defend better.
Yeah.
Which would be similar to what we see in Kursk right now, except that the operation is, of course, quite large, much larger there. I don't interpret Ukraine's offensive actions in Kursk as with maximalist goals of conquering Belitsa or something like this, but rather a tactical decision.
An operational decision more to relieve their own supply lines. I think that's the main thing, because the Russians were getting all too close via Kurilovka. Yep, I certainly agree with that. I don't think the Ukrainians are doing or also planning right now or not in the immediate future. We won't see any huge Ukrainian offensive. Huge offensive are very costly, and we have seen it in 2023 how much it had cost Ukraine to do the offensive that they did, and it may I mean, right now it's obviously hindsight, but yes, sometimes getting pushed back slowly is more beneficial than making a huge last stand.
Yep.
And even though it's not as exciting or anything, it's it's Ukrainian lives that are on the line when they attack, and not ours.
There's a question from Marino, if there's anything happening around Robotine.
Robotinen. As far as I've seen, not much. I obviously don't have the full overview. Maybe I'm missing something as well. My main focus is always units and not frontline changes. I have to stress that there's people who are way more competent when it comes to just the attacks and the frontline chases, etc. It's just something I see as a byproduct when I try to track all the units and the unit stuff. So I haven't seen any huge action there either around Robotine, but that, yeah.
I have another question for you, which is more on the overall reports that we've seen. We've seen both reports on less and less attacks from the Russians or assaults reported by the Ukrainian MOD. I think the last month it's been declining as a general trend. And also recently a lot less personal losses. Killed and injured on the daily reports from the Ukrainian MOD.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Do you feel that's a trend when you've been going through the missing data, etc., that there are less missing, less dead?
Honestly, this is hard to answer for me. Most of my analysis that I do with missing data is qualitative instead of quantitative.
Yeah, it would be a general feeling that you would have.
It's hard for me to confidently answer this question.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, thank you. That's an honest answer.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this concludes my side of things. Mostly, I sadly haven't prepared too much for this week, but yeah, I hope you learned some interesting information. If there's any more questions, you're always free to ask, and always free to hit me up on either Twitter or Blue Sky if you want to do it personal. Yeah, I hope that I can release maybe some stuff on Tochnyi as well soon. And yes, I think that's kind of it for me.
Okay, so thank you so much. I'm looking forward to see the development of the Unip Observer account, and also the possible other things coming from that team. It's exciting to see also more new OSINT groups and outlets, I would say, forming even 3 years into the full-scale invasion.
Yes, it's some very competent people that I work with. They are incredible. I'm really looking forward to it. And we have
Cool.
some stuff on for Kursk planned as well. I hope it will be good.
Good.
All right.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much. I think you did a really good report, so don't worry about not having more content. We almost spent 40 minutes on this, so that's great.
Thanks a lot.
Mr. Erlend, did you see any stuff in chat we should cover? I was looking around. I didn't really. It seems like we covered most of them.
Yep. I think we did cover most of them. I have a question for Gao, which is here though.
Hi, yeah, the TV debate just ended, so I thought I stopped by.
Yeah, so there's been a loss on the German important equipment, and I wondered if you have any comments, because in the end, I think it's kind of a symptomatic to a situation where we see when SPGs are moving, then unfortunately there are more losses, and I wonder what kind of considerations you had about that.
You talk about the Panzerblitzer.
Yes.
Well, I don't know really if that case is a good example of when SPGs are moving, there are more losses, because we could clearly see that the SPG or the Panzerblitzer was observed or covered by the Russian drone while firing. So when, you know what I mean? So when it would be in the fire position, just stayed there, it would have get hit anyway. But I guess like losing like one self-propelled howitzer per year is it's fine. I mean, Germany in the weeks before delivered 11. Sorry, talk German for, but 11 additional units to Ukraine. Now losing one is, yeah. How would you say they can cope with it? I guess. I mean, losing in this war, even like equipment like a self-propelled howitzer, like the Panzerblitzer, is inevitable. So, yeah, it's a hard loss, but it's fine.
Well, so what I refer to is that, yes, it fires from a position, but then it moves, and it's obviously then hit in its hiding place. And this hiding place is not necessarily what I would refer to as a bunker. It's just
shelter,
yeah,
basic shelter. Yeah.
And compared to other firing positions where the vehicle itself is basically hid inside, dug inside the terrain and covered with embankments on each side, and where it's really, really hard to maneuver an FPV drone in, protected with nets, etc. This one is obviously contrast to that. And
oh yeah. That's of course true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And this is, I would say, an attempt on shoot and scoot. Clear attempt. They fire from a position, move, and then get hit, unfortunately.
Yeah, but by the way, just to share a little bit of context, I was talking to Jeff after was it Gig or no Andrew? After Andrew sent me the footage, and we're chatting about where the Panzerblitzer was hit and what damage it could have caused. And Jeff told me, after speaking to some people, that there's apparently a blast door. So the self-propelled howitzer was hit where the propellant charges are being stored. So basically, the white flames you see is the propellant charges, like getting on fire, I assume. And if the blast door was shut down or closed during that impact, during the fire, then the ammunition inside the self-propelled howitzer might not get exploded, so it might not be a total loss. We don't see that because the Russians actually, after the small impact we see with the white flames or the white smoke, sorry, they cut the footage. They don't show any aftermath after that first impact, which might be a reason to hope that this might not be a total loss, that it can still drive, that it goes to repairs to the industry. Jeff and I agreed that they need to completely replace the turret. due to the fire, but it might not be a total loss, which is good news. Just want to share the context.
Yeah, there's been very, very few losses on Panzerhaubitze 2000, so that's the good news about this. But I think it demonstrates that the shoot and scoot tactic is really not something that we should. That's not something we should emphasize on being a successful tactic on the front lines in Ukraine.
The question I now have is, like, how do you verify that? Because from the Panzerhaubitze, they lost 2 so far. They're including this one, that would be the second total loss. How do you verify this versus? I mean, you also have to assume that like a self-report howitzer, like a Panzerhaubitze, and like a M777 or whatever is completely or is used in completely different scenarios. I mean, how many losses are there with stationary, like towed howitzers? Or do you just mean like driving somewhere else and not digging? Was it referring to that, or like towed howitzers versus self-propelled howitzers?
In general, we've observed over the last year and a half or 2 years that SPGs, so being it on wheel or on tracks, when they move, that's when they get lost. Sometimes, of course, not. There've been losses when they've in their dugouts, but in general, also the Ukrainian report that's really a hazard to move the SPG, because then they get spotted and the likelihood that they will have a loss is a lot higher. So it's combination of observing the losses for 2 years plus, and also the reports directly from the units and from the Ukrainian military about how dangerous it is to move. And yes, in theory, you should use an SPG and M777, so towed howitzer, different ways. But the general report from the units in Ukraine is that they actually use them mostly in the same way. So they dig down the SPGs, and they do exactly the same with the towed howitzers.
But when it's that case, why are there then enormously more losses of towed howitzers than with the Panzerhaubitze, for example? I mean,
Because there are like
there are
10
2 losses.
10 to 15 times more towed howitzers or more.
There are 2 losses after 3 years of war.
Yes, there are
I just want
enormously
to say that
more.
this might not be the best example of saying scoot and shoot is a bad tactic when Ukraine lost literally 2 pieces in 3 years of war.
Oh, it's a perfect good example. It's
Because it happened
shooting,
once now,
because
or
because it's shooting and scooting, and it was a loss.
well, yeah, I disagree.
Okay. Well, I don't know how to convince you. Shooting and scooting is really bad.
Well, when you have a towed howitzer and they lost 30 units, let's say, you just have a stationary howitzer which doesn't move, and they lost 30 units of it, and they use scoot and shoot, and they just lost 2 units of it, and you're trying to convince me that the tactic which lost 30 howitzers is better than the tactic which lost 2 howitzers. That's my issue here. Or am I not getting anything? Like, am I missing a part?
Yes, there are enormous amount more towed howitzers deployed and active service on the front line than there are SPGs.
And also, to its credit, the Panzer howitzer can shoot real far, I would say, compared to most towed howitzers, right? I don't know if a towed howitzer that can shoot as far as that is. Am I correct, Erlend?
No, but
Yeah, that's true as well.
also, I think we're here at a point where we say like correlation is not causation, right? Like there are some data points which will sound like, oh, why is it just like 2 units which came through or was hit when they use this program, but like more parts vehicles when they use the other tactic. There's so many factors and so many different things influencing this. That's hard to say, like making it taking one example out. We have this German saying, right, Maurice?
German saying.
Die
Ah ja,
Ausnahme
die
bestätigt die Regel.
Regel.
The exception is basically stating the rule is correct.
Of course.
So
No, but especially with the Panzerhaubitze, there's been also a lot of reports of it surviving hits when it's inside the dugout, because the munition was exploding on the net and it didn't really cause so much damage to the SPG, especially because it has very good armor, top armor. And when you try to hit an SPG that is dug in, it's very difficult to hit it from the sides or in back, or like in this video, if it's protected well by nets. But it's easier to hit it from the top, and that's been the general reports that we've seen of damage to Panzerhaubitze has been that it's been withstanding attacks from the top pretty well, also due to the dugout. So in
Yeah,
general,
I agree. That was why I was asking you if you mean like a howitzer which just stands out in the open, maybe covered by some natural camouflage like wood and something else, and maybe camouflage net, or if you mean like ducked out, like under the ground, basically. When you say use self-propelled howitzers like the Panzerhaubitze just in a dugout, which drives out, drives back in, that's fine for me. But when you're saying like use it as a stationary target just outside the whole time and not move it at all, I would say that's wrong. But use it in a dugout. I mean, I'm not professional. I might be completely wrong, but I'm just saying that when you're saying on a stationary target outside, not moving at all, just covered by some camouflage net, whatever, it just needs to, or the Russians need just to see it once firing, and when it not moves, then it's a target. It's better to move away then, at least in my opinion.
But it isn't, though. That's the thing, and that's the crazy thing that we've been that's a bad way of saying it, but the West has generally developed this tactic of shoot and scoot being the new winning tactic in artillery, and it's shown that it's really not. And the reason for it is because of the unpermissive environment of movement due to very, very highly surveilled space. So that's really something that we didn't anticipate in the beginning of the war. Everyone was thinking that was going to be the opposite, but digging down and really making good defenses around your SPG has been proven to be a survival tactic, and sometimes even digging so good that you can just fire from your hideout, or even just drive 5 meters out, fire back into the dugout.
Well, I'll be sending a recording of this to our resident artilleryman, and he will be putting you all on a tribunal and determining who is innocent and who is guilty. So yeah, this will all be resolved, chat. Don't worry about it. And the guilty will be punished for being wrong. So moving on, Mr. Erlend, I think we're going to wrap up. Yeah, is there any other business you wanted to mention?
I don't have any. I would love to have more artillery people here, and we could talk about this more. But
anything new on the website? I mean, we successfully did a thing on the website, but I don't know if that's visible on the front end or if it kind of is perceptible to the audience.
Nothing new on the website yet, but there are several things that is moving in the background that is possibly going to be published soon there.
Yeah, we made the website more sustainable and more resilient to future stuff going on. I think that's the bottom line. On the back end, it's all back end stuff for now, but front end soon. Yeah, so I think then we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Bionade.
Joseph, maybe we should mention, do we have any other projects we want to point out coming up in the future? Any projects, openings, or any support we are looking for, or anyone who wants to engage with Tochnyi, maybe? Do we have?
I think we're always open to like YouTube collaborations. We mentioned that the other day, and there was a guy, Ukraine Matters, and he was like, "I'll get you guys on my show," and we were like, "Sure." And then we were like, "Hey, let's have a meeting about that," and we haven't heard back. So hopefully we'll hear back soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Okay,
think
okay.
like if you know,
I think we are always looking for like support with editors and writing and things, right?
yeah, I think if anyone has anything they want to contribute as a writer, you know, or any like original research, we'll definitely take a look at it. And if I guess it's to the editing board's standards or whatever it is, we'll it'll be submitted and published. But yeah, I don't know. I think for right now, like we'll maybe leave it there. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you to our panel and all the great segments we had this week. We had a very busy show, a lot of very action-packed show. So appreciate all the information you guys were able to bring. Thanks to our chat for all the questions. We always appreciate your guys' feedback. And thanks to everyone who watched the video later on. We know everyone can't make it live at 2100 Kyiv time every week, every Sunday, as we broadcast at that time. And yeah, so we'll see everyone next week. Slava Ukraini.
Herojem
Herojem
slava.
slava.
On behalf of the brave.